the prophets. So everybody's sure, Jesus, you're somebody. And he turns to his disciples. He says this, but you. What about you? Who do you say that I am? I think Peter, he chimes in for all the disciples. He says, you are the Christ. You're the one. The word Christ is a Greek word for the Hebrew word Messiah. It means anointed. All throughout Israel's history, they had been looking forward to someone in the line of David who would come, who would be this powerful figure, who would do what David did, cast out God's enemies, who would be like this righteous king and prophet and priest, who would do these amazing things. It's as though you're saying, Jesus, you're the one, you're the answer to everything we've been looking forward. And then in verse 30, this theme that we've been discovering in Mark's gospel comes to its climax. Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. So you got it. I am. But shh. Why? Why doesn't Jesus want people to know who he is yet? I want you to think about that a little bit. In just a minute, I'm going to help start to unpack that. And as we begin to move forward week by week, I think it's going to become more and more plain. You see, this place was a place of power, was the way the world worked. This place is a picture of sin. You know what sin is? It's just being totally oriented toward me. There's a selfishness, a self-centeredness, a self-gratifying impulse. When Adam and Eve first sinned in the garden, they basically said to God, not your way, my way. And at the heart, I think all of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we have that impulse running through us, right? I want to do it my way. This world's about me. It's about my pleasure. It's about my well-being. It's about my own gratification. It's about me getting more power, climbing up the ladder, the better I can do. I want to be the top. Jesus brings them to this place, and he asks them this question, who do you say that I am? And they say, you're the Christ. He says, yep, you're right. But don't tell anyone. And I think here's the reason why. Jesus is about to say to him, because you don't know what it means. You have this idea of power. You have this idea of what the Christ should do, but don't tell anyone because you don't know what it means yet. And if you continue reading with me, it says in verse 31, he then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. It says he spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. So Peter, he hears Jesus. Okay, you're right, I'm the Christ, and now here's what's going to happen. I'm going to suffer and die. I'm going to set my own desires, will, everything aside to serve others. Peter says, no, you got it wrong. Jesus turns to him and says, get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of men. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. He goes on, he says, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory and with the holy angels. See, up to this point, and I told you this is a turning point, Jesus has been doing all these miraculous things. He's been showing people that he has all this amazing power, and the crowds are flocking to him. They're flocking to him so much that he can't get alone. You read time and time again, he's trying to withdraw to a mountainside to pray, and he can't get a moment alone. You want to know what's going to happen from this moment forward? We're going to start to hear about how he suffers, and by the time he's already there, guess how many people are there? None. People, they want somebody with power, but they're not ready yet for somebody who's going to just deny himself and take up his cross and go to die and show us a demonstration of what love is all about. I think Jesus, he wants his disciples to see something before they begin to proclaim that he is the Christ, which is exactly what they're going to do. Jesus is going to rise from the grave. They're going to go across the world telling people that Jesus is the one. But before they're ready to do that, they don't only need to know about his identity, but about his mission and his purpose. The Apostle Paul, when he talks about Jesus, says of him that he was equal with God. But he didn't hold on to that. He humbled himself. He made himself nothing. He became a servant. And you say, what Jesus is not going to do in a place like this is try and rise and grasp power and be oriented toward himself. He is going to give himself away. And Jesus believes that this is a power so great, so awesome, that his disciples need to know about it first. You know, if you begin reading this account in other Gospels, there's a phrase that Jesus uses when he says, "But you, who do you say that I am?" Peter says, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God." Other accounts of this story say that Jesus turned to him and said, "You're right, Peter. And your name's Peter," which there's a Greek word Petra, which means rock. He says, "You're right, Peter. And on this rock, I'm going to build my church." Then he says this phrase, "And the gates of hell will not overcome it." Which I think is awesome that he said right here. Think about this for a minute. I'm going to show you something, Peter. You're right. And I'm going to tell you about a power that